22. I'm Robert Crescione,
I'm John Gatz.
and you've just tuned in to America in Danger. Welcome to the show. We are in the 89th week of the Great Reset, and it seems to be going swimmingly for the globalist elite.
For the Great Resetters.
For the Great Resetters, exactly.
That's right.
You know, and tonight, you know, there's so many people, I've seen so many things on Facebook and Twitter and what have you, just vowing fealty to government and officials and bureaucrats, just taking everything they put out with you know, at face value and accepting it as the gospel
Which
truth.
is just amazing on its face that even happens.
It is. And, you know, the media is the worst. These journalists and so-called journalists, I hate to call them journalists because they're really not professionals, any of them.
Right. But since we're redefining things so readily these days, you know, we can certainly, we've obviously redefined what journalist is. It's actually a lackey for state propaganda.
Perfect.
You know, that's the new definition for journalists, and it's certainly the evident definition for journalists as far as I can tell.
Well, you think if we edit the Wikipedia page that they would lock it after that for us,
exactly,
like they've done with the definition of recession?
Well, that's right. And for those who don't know what Robert's referring to, yeah, after all the talk about what a recession is, you know, redefining it. The administration has denied or redefined the traditional definition of a recession of being 2 consecutive quarters of negative growth. They quickly went in and edited the various Wikipedia pages and the Wikipedia page that discusses recession and gave it a definitional description that sort of parrots the narrative of the administration, and then they locked the page down. I mean, if that's not Orwellian, I do not know what is.
It is.
I mean, it is astounding and we're in a realm here now where we just redefine things at whim.
Well, men are women, women are men, children are adults making decisions for themselves.
Right.
You know?
And what could be simpler than the word recession? To recede. The economy has receded, and the definition, the technical definition, has always been 2 consecutive quarters of a receding economy, negative growth. Okay.
That is a recession.
That is a recession by definition. Now, whether or not it's some kind of, you know, there are other mitigating factors, or the economy that's going to bounce back from that recession, that's all fine. But recession, economics has a definition. And I'll tell you, it really, you can tell he's really tripped my trigger here because I have a real problem with, you know, to me, words mean things.
Well, they do.
I'm a big fan of that phrase, and that's because they do. Word and definitions mean things. And if you don't adhere to definitions, especially in complex technical subjects, okay, things quickly spin out of control. And the left loves to just use euphemisms and nebulous terms, and now they're just flagrantly redefining things, okay, to the extent where it's just defying all logic and common sense.
It is. It absolutely is. You know, and if you don't think that the government will lie to you, the government has a long history of lying to the American people.
Right.
You know, and here are just a few of the things that came out through declassification, and just they were revealed under the Freedom of Information Act. You know, remember the Tuskegee experiment, the syphilis study?
Yeah.
You know, 300 people denied treatment because they were in this study thinking they were getting treated.
Right.
But, the government, the equivalent of the CDC back then, I don't know what it was called back then, but they were studying these people and let the syphilis disease run its course. Yeah. That's real great. They lied to these people, because they weren't of any value. Well, their only value was test subjects.
Correct.
There was, in 1950, Operation Sea Spray. You know, they actually sprayed biological agents in the streets of San Francisco to see how it would spread through the public.
Maybe that explains some things that we've observed, you know, about San Francisco over the decades. I mean, maybe there's been more of a legacy of that experiment than anybody realizes.
It could be. It could very well be. They might not have picked up on that effect.
Right.
Operation Big Buzz in Georgia State Parks. They released malaria-carrying mosquitoes. Of course, the CIA is always known for lying and engaging in some very weird things.
Yeah, very right.
They've done it several times. The MK Ultra project, the Operation Mockingbird project, more MK Ultra projects. In the 60s, I remember this. I remember the Tonkin Gulf incident.
Right.
I was very young at the time, but that made the news. That drew us into the Vietnam
conflict. That was sort of the spark.
Never happened. The second Tonkin Gulf event that drew us into that war never happened.
Right, fiction.
It was made up. But they told the American people it happened. 90 and 91, this is as recent as 90 and 91, they had a measles experimental vaccine that they injected babies, thousands around the world. Thousands died. They had it going on here in the U.S. for a while, and they had to stop because of the number of deaths.
Right.
Jump up to 2002. NSA spying, FISA court abuse.
Yeah, I mean,
Data collection, eavesdropping.
And that was all in the wake of the Patriot Act, which a lot of people supported it, a lot of conservatives supported it, erroneously. Okay, I mean, that was now, there were a few, and I include myself among them, who said, yeah, this is bad moon rising. I mean, this is not something we should be doing. We're going to regret this. And, of course, we do, and we are.
Yeah, we do. You know, when they said they were going to have secret courts.
Right.
First thought that came to my mind was, well, the only countries that have secret courts are communist tyrannies.
That's right.
That don't allow public viewing of the legal system.
Well, first of all, I mean, liberty does carry with it a few risks.
It does.
Okay, and I, for one, prefer to take those risks. Okay. I mean, when 9/11 happened, for example, since we're talking about the Patriot Act, there were a number of things they could have done to mitigate that potential problem without erecting secret courts and a surveillance state. First of all, you could have kicked every one of the people that anybody in this country who was here on a visa from any of those countries, students, get them out for the time being.
Exactly.
You know, we don't have any obligation to host those folks.
None at all.
Okay. A lot of things they could have done without impacting on Americans' rights, but that's not how they think.
No, it's not.
Fundamentally, and this is where I think people don't understand. Fundamentally, the government is not your friend. Okay.
There you go.
It's just really, and it's the same. This may hit some people wrong, but it's kind of like cops. Cops really aren't your friend.
No.
Okay, they're there to enforce the law and really to find infractions of the law. Okay, and you run a risk when you interact with them of them deciding that you require their attention in that way. So it's best to avoid. So government is the same way. And the founders were very adamant about that fact. They understood that fact, and that is the purpose of the Constitution.
It
is to keep those things in check. So, again, this is one of the things that really riles me because I've never understood the left, okay, with their almost paranoid suspicion of business, especially big business, which I understand because big business is big, and anything big can be untrustworthy, large collections of people. But big business does not carry with it the power of coercive force. They do not have the ability to come into your home with guns legally and haul you out. Government does. And I've never understood why people who pretend to be, rather pretend to be champions of liberty or civil liberties, which they don't like to use the word liberty, they like to say things more like civil liberty. Why they want to have so much power vested in the government. I think it's because they really don't believe in liberty. They believe in their own ability to rule by fiat and to make decisions for others, and they don't like your freedom. They don't like my freedom.
Exactly.
Okay, and the freedom is bestowed by the Constitution.
Well, back in the '60s, the slogans were never trust the establishment, never trust anyone over 30, never trust anyone from the government, never trust anyone from big business corporations and what have you. And now, it's the exact opposite. The script has really flipped. We have people out there actually protesting in support of these big pharma companies with this experimental vaccine, protesting in support of government. That one really gets me. I mean, all I've heard my whole life, is, oh, the big pharma, well, they're just trying to make money and they're holding back the cure for cancer and, all these nefarious things. There's these evil big corporations, the oil companies, and especially big pharma. And now all of a sudden, every Democrat out there is a shill for big pharma. Well, you got to get the vaccine. And, I think the Trump presidency broke their brains. Well, I think it really, and permanently. I agree. To the point where all they can do is invoke some sort of, opposition based on any impulse that was derived from Trump's policies, and instantly they have to, well, he created the vaccine, we're against it while he's in office, and then he wasn't in office, well, we're for the vaccine. Yeah. That was the biggest shift in opinion I've ever seen, because Kamala and Joe Biden both said, yeah, we won't take the vaccine. If he develops it, we're not going to take it. And then as soon as they go into office, as soon as the election was stolen and they were installed, because they weren't elected, they were installed. All of a sudden it's like, oh yeah, you got to take the vaccine and you got to have six more jabs of it. And well, you're probably going to have it every 6 months. Get your weekly booster. Yeah. So the government will lie to you, folks. And one of the biggest lies that we've got going on right now is this climate emergency garbage.
Yeah.
It never ceases to amaze me. There is no climate emergency.
Right, none. There's none.
None.
I mean, it's not, okay, well, we accept the premise, but we want to find a different, less aggressive way or less authoritarian way to implement.
Right.
We understand there's a problem. No, there's no problem. The whole
problem.
thing is complete nonsense.
It is. Climate, and I've got a little video I want to run. And this is a meteorologist in Joplin, Illinois, I believe. And he makes the point that climate is over hundreds of thousands of years. Weather is today.
Right, that's right.
And watch this video, and you tell me that this isn't just, prime evidence that everything we're being fed on this climate emergency, this existential emergency, is horse hockey. Lee, if you'll run that video for me, buddy. Take a look at this. We'll be right back.
Hey, what's up, guys? Meteorologist Doug Hetty, of course. It's been a hot summer so far. I always get asked, how does this compare to summers in the past? Of course, climate change is always thrown into the mix. First thing, remember, climate change is over hundreds and thousands of years. Climate and weather are completely different. But let's go ahead and take a look. All right, let's check this out. This is for the month of July 2022, and this is also Joplin, Missouri. Look at this. Only 2 days this month, we've been below average and still 89 degrees. Look at the stretches of triple-digit heat. Today is July 26th. So by this point in time, it's been a pretty hot summer. Let's compare to some previous ones. So let's take a look. So by July 26th, how many times have we hit 100 degrees? Some of the hottest summers of all time, 1954, we did it 21 times by this date. 1980, much of the same. Look at 2011 and 2012, 15 times we had hit 100 degrees. And then here we are, 2022, 16 times so far this summer. All right, so let's look at the total 100 degree plus days on some of the hottest summers of all time. 34 times, and the highest recorded temperature in Joplin, Missouri of 115. 33 times, 1980, 2011, 28 times, 2012, 26 times, and of course, so far this summer, we've hit 116 times. I kind of have a feeling I'm going to have to do a TikTok about climate change. Climate change and weather are different, but we're going to leave that right here for tonight. But I wanted to compare some of the hottest summers of all time and what we have been seeing so far this summer.
Sorry for the video quality there. That was a TikTok video, by the way, so sometimes you get decent downloads, sometimes you don't. But the point is, all of this hysteria about it being hot this summer, being hotter than any other summer. I don't remember it ever being this hot.
Right, I know. Well, people are really lack self-awareness about their own, perceptions and their own changes over time. I mean, when I was 10 years old, heat didn't bother me. I'd jump in a 75 degree, 70 degree pool, swim till my lips were blue. It didn't affect me. Now, I got no interest in any of that.
No.
I mean, and so for me, I don't ever remember being this uncomfortable in the summer. I don't ever remember being 60 years old either.
Well, that's
exactly.
That is exactly right.
That's just the deal.
Yeah, and if you look at these weather charts, I mean, and this is the reality of it, folks. If you look at the weather history, in the 40s and 50s and 60s, it was much hotter.
That's right.
It was much hotter, many more days. We had historical weather events. There were droughts, there were floods. There have always been those. The storms aren't getting any worse. The floods aren't getting any worse. You've got many more people living in coastal areas.
That's right. More developed. Areas. That's right.
Take Hurricane Floyd here in Rocky Mountain. A lot of homes flooded. Why? because they were built in the floodplain.
Correct.
You go back 100 years ago, there weren't many homes in the floodplain because those people knew, well, I want to build up high and dry.
Well, we could spend an awful lot of time, teasing out various details and scientific data and pointing out the flaws in some of the thinking, but, really, I boil it down to just a few basic facts that reveal to me that the whole thing is nonsense. One, the people who are promulgating all this nonsense, they don't really act like they believe it. Okay,
Right.
Just like many of them didn't with COVID. You catch them doing all these things.
Right.
That now, if COVID was as dangerous as they said, I for one, and if I thought it was as dangerous as they said, I'd be kind of hiding out and be very circumspect about what I did. None of these authority types, and the legislators and the governor were doing anything. It's the same thing with the climate change. If we really had 10 or 12 years, before the planet was going to be uninhabitable, first of all, they would be deploying nuclear energy to beat the ban, because that would be the actual real solution if that problem were real. Okay, nuclear energy has a zero carbon footprint. It's very safe. Okay, and even if it weren't, even if it meant, okay, we're gonna have, we're gonna build several hundred nuclear reactors. We might have 10 that melt down and make some areas uninhabitable. That's still better than an entire planet that's uninhabitable. That would be a survival thing. You wouldn't pursue some ridiculous wind and solar strategy and policy, which to date has only generated like 3% of total global energy after trillions spent, literally trillions spent, okay? Which, and the simple fact there is that it takes more carbon to produce those alternative energy, and it all comes from China. None of this makes any sense, okay?
It
but
does, Bob.
Common sense has to tell you that carbon dioxide, which is a natural part of transpiration, okay, and a part of the plant cycle and the human cycle and the mammal cycle, okay, represents 0.01% of the atmosphere. It's a very small constituent. All right, somehow that, which has increased maybe a small amount, is going to completely destroy the planet because of global warming. That's nonsense. That's made up. Okay.
It is. It's made up. It's ridiculous. It's just. If you look at the temperature history, we've been through the coolest monthly anomaly in 10 years, and this has been the coolest June in 22 years.
Oh, well, that's the thing about climate change, well, it may not be up, but it's colder than average, so the climate's changing.
There you go.
Yeah, that's why they went from global warming to climate change. That was a marketing thing. Global warming was starting to not make sense because we were getting too many years where the temperature had receded.
Yeah. Well, it started out with global cooling. We were heading for an ice age.
I remember that.
And if you're on, if you go online, you do a Google search and what have you for global cooling. You'll see a bunch of Time magazine covers that have global cooling announcements.
Right.
They're mostly fake.
Yeah.
Because Time magazine didn't run that cover. Now, I believe there was a magazine.
This is in the early 70s.
This is in the early 70s. What was the magazine? Science Digest, maybe? One of I subscribed to it as a teenager because I just found it very interesting. I believe they ran a cover with global cooling on it. Now, interesting thing, when I was researching all this, I found the fact checkers information about the Time magazine. I just happened to be on Facebook, and I saw they had a warning up there, and that's what it was. It was the Time magazine cover, and they said, "Oh, this is fake."
Right.
So I said, "Well, let me go see what they have to say." So they went through this big long diatribe about this is fake. Time magazine has never announced this. They've never run this cover. It's all fake. Everything there is fake. Everything associated with it is fake.
Right.
Well, Time magazine has a nice archive. I went and pulled up that particular version, that edition of Time magazine, and guess what was inside? A global cooling article saying we're headed for an ice age.
Right.
And that temperatures are dropping, and all of this weather is being caused by our heading into an ice age.
Right. The tagline I read is that if we have a couple of more years of temperatures like they did in 1971, we won't be able to survive.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, it went on to say, scientists have found other indications of global cooling. For one thing, there's been a noticeable expansion of the great belt of dry, high-altitude polar winds, the so-called circumpolar vortex.
Well, it all sounds very sciencey, so it must be real.
It does. And it goes on to, to keep talking about that and what have you. But that's from Time magazine, so they were in on it too.
Well, I remember, and I don't remember what the show was. It was one of the sort of, higher-minded science documentary shows at the time. But the reason I remember it distinctly is because I was a Star Trek fan in those days, in the 70s,
Mm-hmm.
And Leonard Nimoy was the narrator for this particular episode about the coming ice age, the global cooling that was going to subsume all of us in this nightmare scenario. Yep. And of course, a large part of it was due to man's activity, putting particulates in the atmosphere and blocking sunlight and so forth.
Of course.
These folks never give up. They're like cockroaches. They never go away.
They simply redefine whatever it is they're pushing.
That's right.
And come back to it. And with that, we got to take a little break. When we come back, we're going to talk a little bit more about the fake climate emergency.
Yep. There's no shortage of information there.
That's for sure. You could go on endlessly about it. But, NOAA, with all the 40 plus years of satellite data tracking temperatures, the NOAA, which is the National Oceanographic and Atmospheric Administration, they still use ground-based.
Now, I wonder why that is.
I don't know, but we're going to talk about it when we get back. So watch this, and we'll be back in just a minute. Stay tuned.
Are you afraid to answer the phone because of bill collectors? A Chapter 13 plan can help. Chapter 13 allows people with too many bills to work out a debt repayment plan under federal law. It helps you control your debts instead of your debts controlling you. Chapter 13 stops creditors from harassing you and stops repossessions and foreclosures. It allows you to answer the phone again without fear or worry. Call H. Frank Allen, Attorney at Law, a debt relief agency providing bankruptcy relief under the Bankruptcy Code.
Safe and secure. These two words are simple yet powerful. In order to feel this way, you should know that you have the tools necessary to provide safety and security for yourself and your loved ones. As with any tools, learning how to properly use them is best learned from experts who we know we can trust. Experts who have a proven track record and a commitment to serve and protect. Enroll now in Sheriff Keystone's North Carolina Concealed Handgun Carry class, taught at the CPF Training Center in Rocky Mount. Sheriff Stone utilizes a first-in-class classroom environment and indoor firing range. This ensures a training experience that is welcoming to both first-time firearms students and those with more experience. An attentive staff that takes time to teach students the legal requirements of becoming a permitted concealed carry citizen. In addition, Sheriff Clee Atkinson teaches students situational awareness, self-defense, and skills needed to avoid becoming a victim. As you know, Sheriff Stone and Sheriff Atkinson have committed their lives to serving and protecting. There is a reason Sheriff Stone and Sheriff Atkinson's class book in advance. Come learn from two of the region's most seasoned and professional public servants. Safety and security, two simple but powerful words that can be a part of who you and your family are. Call 252-813-8898. Register today.
Every dad deserves comfort that's just right. And at the Badcock Home Furniture and More Father's Day sale, that's exactly what you'll find. Starting with buy one, get one free recliners. Plus, save hundreds on reclining sofas and sectionals. And get a free foundation with select mattresses, including Sealy. Find the styles and savings that are just right for Dad. Only at Badcock Home Furniture and More. Just right.
All right, we are back, and as I was saying before the break, the National Oceanographic and Atmospheric Administration, who we typically tend to think, well, they should have no bias in any of these political things.
One would think they'd be politically neutral, agnostic on these various subjects.
You would think
Yeah.
that they would really, truly be true researchers who want accurate facts to
Right.
be put out there.
Right.
And probably most of the field staff is.
Well, that's kind of like the FBI statement. I don't know that I would even agree with that these days. And there's a time when I would have said, yeah, I think you're right. Now I'm not so sure.
Well, we've seen where the FBI
That's
has
right.
really sorry field staff.
Right. Oh, the rank and file. It's just the leadership. Yeah, I don't think
Peter
so.
Strzok and,
Right, that's right.
His sleazy girlfriend.
Anyway, I digress. Yeah, right.
Absolutely. But anyway, the NOAA uses ground-based temperature tracking, which I'm not sure why in the technology age when we have satellites that can monitor temperature, upper atmosphere, lower atmosphere, ocean temperatures, what have you. In fact, there's a new technology where they can measure deep ocean temperatures. But NOAA prefers to use the old standard ground-based. Problem with ground-based temperature monitoring is if you're close to asphalt or a big concrete building or anything like that, what happens during the day? It heats up.
Right.
It stores heat. So it stores heat. Well, that heat is released at night when it cools down.
That's right.
Well, those temperature monitoring stations are compromised.
Right. They call it the urban heat island effect.
Urban heat island effect. Now, 96% of their temperature monitoring stations are biased.
They fail to meet their own published standards for locating these heat monitoring stations. And in fact, I thought it was interesting in the article that details all this. To me, the most interesting line was, if you look at the unperturbed stations that adhere to NOAA's published standard, ones that are correctly located and free of localized urban heat biases, they display about half the rate of warming compared to perturbed stations that have such biases, Watts said. Yet NOAA continues to use the data from their warm, biased, century-old surface temperature networks to produce monthly and yearly reports to the U.S. public on the state of the climate.
Interesting.
Well, there's a reason for that. So they're peddling a narrative.
Yeah, they absolutely are. And you know, if you look at the increase that they do say, that they do publish, it's insignificant, really.
Right.
But if you cut that in half, that's even more insignificant.
Right.
And
half of nothing is definitely nothing.
Half of nothing is definitely nothing. And you know, we know that the temperature shifts up and down based on the tilt of the Earth and the activity of the sun and all of these factors.
Right.
It doesn't have anything to do with carbon dioxide in the atmosphere.
Zero.
That's the biggest lie that they're telling us.
That's right.
And the public has eaten that up.
Well, and this is a subtle point, but it's profound because I hear so many people having the discussion, even people who would sympathize with our point of view on this. They'll start talking about global warming. They say, well, nobody's for pollution. Okay.
Right.
Well, carbon dioxide is not pollution. They have conflated carbon dioxide with sulfur dioxide and carbon monoxide and other noxious fumes. Carbon dioxide is a natural part of the transpiration cycle.
Exactly.
We exhale carbon dioxide and inhale oxygen and that's necessary for our life process. Our life processes. Plants do just the opposite. Okay. And a little more CO2 will produce a greener world, frankly.
It will.
Okay. And to the extent that it produces a slightly warmer world, that warming that it's produced pales compared to other effects that affect warming and cooling. The sun, the solar cycle, solar energy, other factors in the climate. And frankly, if there is going to be a climatological shift, I'd much rather go in the direction of warming than cooling.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
I mean,
if you look at the studies that have been done with the warming versus cooling,
right.
Well, in warming, many fewer people die.
Absolutely.
Because of the environment.
Absolutely.
While if you go the other direction with the cooling, more people are going to die.
Yeah, I mean, really, I just can't say it enough because it's just so, to me, it's patently obvious that this whole thing is a scam. I think all the COVID hysteria was a sort of a trial run to see what would people tolerate, how can we do all this, and just get people accustomed to some of these draconian things we're going to do. And, you know, I thought the lid was blown off the whole climate nonsense a few years ago. You know, they had a whole, the Chicago Board of Trade had a whole carbon trading system set up back when, early 2000s. Well, that went bust, and I thought, yeah, the wheels are coming off this thing. What's obvious to me is they're just barreling ahead with it no matter what.
Right.
They're just going to impose all this stuff on us. They're going to strip us of our ability to have cheap and efficient energy, and it is efficient compared to what they're proposing.
Oh, it absolutely is.
And there's enough. The United States has the largest amount of fossil fuel reserves. Okay, of any country. We have 200 years of natural gas at projected consumption rates. I mean, it's just criminal what they intend to do to the standard of living of people in this country. And to me, this is a line in the sand kind of thing. I mean, people really need to push back on this nonsense and don't be afraid to say, look, I don't care if you're quoting some climate scientist from Harvard. Okay, he has his own agenda, like funding from the various agencies and his own biases. It is not possible. First of all, one important fact is none of these predictions are based on actual data. They're based on models.
Right.
Okay, they're all based on these computer models, and anybody that's ever done any of that kind of work, and I've done a little bit of it, knows that the fudge factors that can be brought to bear on modeling complex processes that are difficult to model to begin with and have 1,000 variables, you can get any outcome you want. Okay.
Yes, you can.
I mean, you really can.
A perfect example of that is the hurricane tracking maps, where they project where it's going to go. Because you always have that one that just goes off into left field somewhere.
And that's right. You've got the European model, and you've got the American model. And they have 15 different, 20 different tracks on these things. That's because they don't really know.
They don't really know.
Right.
Now, one thing that they're doing, and this is absolutely ridiculous. Tom DeWeese, his newsletter came out, and they've got a project called Heartland Greenway. Which is definitely not anything. It's not a greenway. It's not a road. It's not a pathway. It's what it is. It's a 1,300-mile long pipeline across prime farm country, where they're going to seize this through eminent domain, or they're trying to seize viable farmland to put in a pipeline to pump carbon dioxide.
To sequester it.
Underground. So what that tells me, number one, right there, it's not a pollution.
Right.
If you're going to dump this stuff underground, well, you don't just shoot uranium underground, nuclear waste underground, toxic chemicals underground, all these toxins and poisons. You don't just pump them into the ground.
This is almost like the perfect design for just squandering money.
Yep.
It'd be as if you said, okay, we're going to outlaw the wheel. You got to come up with another way to do what the wheel does. Even though the wheel works perfectly well, it's the best solution to most problems.
Yeah.
Yet you can't use the wheel anymore. So how are you going to do the things you want to do? Well, people would probably ultimately figure out a way around it. But what a squandering of resources and effort and thinking and intellectual capacity and everything. Yeah. That's what that project is.
Yeah. Well, the levitating trains. There's been the pipe dream of so many people. The levitating cars, levitating. Well, that technology may come to bear in the far future, but not right now. And what these people are trying to do is say, okay, well, yeah, we got to get rid of the wheels. You're going to have to go to levitation.
Right.
Well, you can't do it, folks.
Right.
Wind and solar ain't cutting it. Wind and solar are not reliable, number one. They only produce 30% of the time.
Right. Well, I don't know.
Nuclear and coal, they run 24/7.
Well, I don't know if I can find it, but I thought one of the really interesting facts here was, let's see. I don't think I'm going to be able to extract the exact information, but basically it was comparing the cost of erecting a shale oil producing station versus a windmill. So the cost is roughly the same. I think several $1 million. The output was 0.7 barrels of oil per hour for the windmill, the equivalent, versus 10 barrels of oil for the shale. Okay, well, that's going to make your electricity rates hideously expensive. Okay, but make no mistake. Okay, and I don't think we emphasize. I mean, this needs to be understood. All the stuff they're doing is on purpose. Okay.
On purpose.
I mean, there are a few people who probably believe the nonsense, but mostly this is being perpetuated by people who are just looking to exercise control. Okay. They want you out of your private car. Look, the World Economic Forum, which we talk about that crowd a lot.
Yes,
they published a statement this week. They want to reduce, and with the goal of eliminating private transportation ownership. They want to eliminate private automobiles.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Look, these folks, ever since the United States was established 250 plus years ago, the mentality and the kings and the queens of the world have hated the fact that the elites are not in charge of everything.
That's right.
And they've been trying to unwind the United States ever since. And that's a large part of what this is an effort toward global control, okay, by people who hate your freedom. They hate the freedom that we have in this country. And the thing that I lament, I don't think people in this country really understand. They've had this freedom for so much time and so long, and it's such a part of their history and their family history. They don't even understand what it could be like to not have it.
Well,
okay?
that's true.
To not be able to pick where it is you work, to not be able to say, yeah, I'm going to go drive to such and such a restaurant this afternoon. They don't want you with that ability.
No, they don't.
Okay, and they resent, and to me it's obvious with the crowd in charge now, they don't just dismiss you, they hate you.
Yeah.
They hate you, and they're enacting policies that reflect that very clearly.
I agree. And the sad part about it is now corporations are getting in on this.
Correct.
The ESG.
Correct.
The environmental social governance regulations,
right.
Self-imposed. And
right.
again, this is self-imposed. These are self-inflicted wounds. And all of this ESG came out of the World Economic Forum.
Correct.
And it's a rating system by which corporations are rated. Ultimately, the goal is if you don't have a high enough ESG, you don't get credit, you don't get loans, you don't get approved, you get cited, all of these things. Well, Ron DeSantis down in Florida, like him or not, Ron DeSantis is doing what he should be doing. He's setting up to block this ESG garbage.
Right.
The ESG, gun companies. Oh no, they don't get a good ESG score.
Right.
Because their social aspect.
Right, drives it way
not
down.
good. And plus they tag them on the environmental because lead bullets. Oh my God.
Right.
But it's a disaster waiting to happen.
Well, I mean, first of all, and he has good grounds. I haven't read that particular article, but I know for one thing, ESG may well be a violation of fiduciary responsibility on the parts of boards of directors. Okay, for whose sole purpose is to derive profit for the shareholders. That is their sole function. Okay, that is their sole fiduciary responsibility, and fiduciary means that you have a moral obligation and a legal obligation. A legal obligation
yes,
to treat another person's money that you're in charge of as if it were your own.
Exactly.
Okay, and to make decisions that are in their best interest by law. And so companies that start pursuing the ESG model are probably in violation of that. I actually heard Tom Cotton, surprisingly, he's going after that. He went after don't forget his first name, Fink, who's in charge of BlackRock. BlackRock is one insidious outfit.
Absolutely.
If you've got a 401k, you probably got money invested in BlackRock.
Probably so.
And we need to start getting smart about who we give our money, because we can't do much about these communists that are in charge of the government right now, but we can do something about funding the people who we voluntarily give our money to.
Absolutely.
And so to me, that's an important point. I mean, I would, go through your portfolio with a fine-tooth comb and really try and excise any of the actors that are involved in this ESG stuff.
Absolutely. Excuse me. The ESG is destructive. Number one, it's contrived. It really is not about enhancing anything. And you mentioned the fiduciary duty. Well, I don't know if you remember when they were pushing the benefits corporation.
I was going to bring that up. The so-called B corporations.
The B Corp here in North Carolina. And again, I mentioned Wynn Coleman last week or the week before on the Convention of States. Well, she fought against this benefits corporation as well. Thankfully,
exposed it quite successfully.
And so we're grateful for that.
And it didn't really go anywhere.
It did not. But the whole thing about the Benefits Corporation was that it eliminated that fiduciary duty.
Correct. That was a key feature legally, right.
The legal, just doing away with fiduciary duty.
And that was so in the open. People said, well, I'm not really, I mean, I might make some personal choices about what companies I'll invest in, but I don't want corporations who aren't interested in actually making a profit taking my money and using my money for, I want to invest in things that are going to have a return for my future and my family and so forth.
And benefits corp, you don't need a benefits corp. That's what a non-profit designation is for.
Right.
That's what that designation is for. So you're not looking at making a profit. You're looking at providing a service to the community, and that's all fine and well. And people will make donations to it. But what they want to do, they want to turn this all around And the B Corp didn't really fly, so they turned around and repackaged it as the ESG.
You got the ESG. And what they've managed to do is get a lot of these big entities, you know, the SEC and some of these other
and banks
to participate. And I'm not sure how that has happened, other than the fact that we're several generations deep in people that have been educated largely by communists in the universities, and so they've sold them this stuff, and so they're implementing it. But it doesn't take much research to find out that all the countries that have managed to achieve a high ESG score have imploded. Sri Lanka, who decided they weren't going to use nitrogen-based fertilizer in their farming, went from being completely self-sufficient to, in the last year, completely melting down and imploding. So they've blown up. Ghana has blown up, for the same reason, pursuing a high ESG score, by eliminating their fossil fuel usage. Well, they've blown up. But they had high ESG scores in the high 90s. Now, for comparison, the United States' current ESG score is in the mid-50s. All right, they're trying to get us up into the 80s and 90s, which will mean you're going to live like a serf, and you're going to freeze in the dark
and be hungry.
A lot.
And with that, we got to take a little break. When we come back, we're going to talk about Senator Manchin, Senator Schumer, and Senator McConnell.
3 of my favorites.
Yes, indeed. So you won't want to miss that. Stay tuned. We'll be right back for more America in Danger.
Are you afraid to answer the phone because of bill collectors? A Chapter 13 plan can help. Chapter 13 allows people with too many bills to work out a debt repayment plan under federal law. It helps you control your debts instead of your debts controlling you. Chapter 13 stops creditors from harassing you and stops repossessions and foreclosures. It allows you to answer the phone again without fear or worry. Call H. Frank Allen, Attorney at Law, a debt relief agency providing bankruptcy relief under the Bankruptcy Code.
Safe and secure. These 2 words are simple yet powerful. In order to feel this way, you should know that you have the tools necessary to provide safety and security for yourself and your loved ones. As with any tools, learning how to properly use them is best learned from experts who we know we can trust. Experts who have a proven track record and a commitment to serve and protect. Enroll now in Sheriff Keystone's North Carolina Concealed Handgun Carry class, taught at the CPF Training Center in Rocky Mount. Sheriff Stone utilizes a first-in-class classroom environment and indoor firing range. This ensures a training experience that is welcoming to both first-time firearms students and those with more experience. An attentive staff that takes time to teach students the legal requirements of becoming a permitted concealed carry citizen. In addition, Sheriff Clee Atkinson teaches students situational awareness, self-defense, and skills needed to avoid becoming a victim. As you know, Sheriff Stone and Sheriff Atkinson have committed their lives to serving and protecting. There is a reason Sheriff Stone and Sheriff Atkinson's class book in advance. Come learn from 2 of the region's most seasoned and professional public servants. Safety and security, 2 simple but powerful words that can be a part of who you and your family are. Call 252-813-8898. Register today.
Every dad deserves comfort that's just right. And at the Badcock Home Furniture and More Father's Day sale, that's exactly what you'll find. Starting with buy one, get one free recliners. Plus, save hundreds on reclining sofas and sectionals. And get a free foundation with select mattresses, including Sealy. Find the styles and savings that are just right for Dad. Only at Badcock Home Furniture and More. Just right.
All right, we are back, and as I said before the break, I want to talk about Manchin, Schumer, and McConnell a little bit, but what comes to mind is the old cartoon with Charlie Brown and Lucy and the football, and everybody always wondered, and this may this may be showing my age a little bit because I don't know that Charlie Brown is popular these days. I think they're politically incorrect or something. I don't know. But anyway, you know, Lucy would always say, "Come on, kick the football, Charlie." Mm-hmm. And he'd run up there and she'd pull it out at the last minute.
But he'd kind of seek some assurances he wasn't going to get...
Yeah. He'd say, "Oh, you're going to hold it this time."
Right.
Yeah, I'm going to hold it. Well, you know, everyone always wondered, well, why does he do this repeatedly? Mm-hmm. Why does he not learn that lesson? Well, bottom line is, that was the punchline of the joke, so he was doing what he was supposed to do. Right. It's a cartoon, after all.
Right.
Now, if you ask how Mitch McConnell, who has, 30, almost 40 years in the Senate?
Yeah, it seems a lot longer to me, but yeah.
How he could be duped and fooled
yet again,
so many times, yet again, by Chuck Schumer, who in this case I'll assign Lucy to him, and you never know, he could turn up and be Lucy Schumer next week.
Well, he really could. That's the thing.
But nonetheless, he's Lucy, and Mitch McConnell is Charlie Brown. So you ask, why does he continue to kick the football when he knows Lucy's going to pull it out?
Correct. That's because he wants. That's his job.
That's his job. He's getting accomplished what they want to accomplish because they're all in it together.
Right.
And what he receives from it, from his little part in the play, is plausible deniability.
That's right.
Oh my goodness, he fooled me again.
Right. I'm so mad. This is never going to happen again until the next time that we go through this charade.
McConnell is known for pulling defeat from the jaws of victory.
That's right.
He really is. He has sold us down the river more times than I can count.
It really is amazing. And I tell you, and just to be explicit here, what we're talking about is this sort of resurrected Build Back Better bill that they just passed, and they're getting ready to, have they passed it yet in the Senate? Not yet, but they will, because Manchin, who is holding it up, has said that, okay, I'm on board now. But this was after a bunch of negotiations in which essentially McConnell was assured this wasn't going to happen.
Right, through reconciliation.
Right, so now Manchin has agreed to all this ridiculous climate spending. And of course, one of the most onerous provisions to me, and I don't know if other people picked up on this, is they're going to be implementing the OECD, the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development. Okay, that's an international organization. 15% global minimum tax proposal. Okay, well, this is something that the globalists have been talking about for a while. Janet Yellen and those types. Mm-hmm. They want to impose a standard. They want to make it so a nation, a sovereign nation, can't impose less of a tax, a corporate tax, than 15%. Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, this is just world communism, is all it is.
It is.
Okay. Essentially, makes it impossible for the United States to achieve competitiveness. One of the successes of the Trump administration was in lowering these corporate tax rates, and the left hated him for it because it brought billions of dollars, maybe even trillions. I'm pretty sure it was in the billions, hundreds of billions of dollars, back to the United States for use here to our best purpose. Mm-hmm. Okay. So that, in addition to all this other climate nonsense, in a bill euphemistically, redefinitionally called the Inflation Reduction Act.
Yeah.
These people, I mean, they are shameless. I mean, I'll give them credit there.
They are.
You know, the level of in your face with their activities. Clearly, they're not worried about voter reprisal, which makes me wonder really if the midterms are going to be as much of a red sweep as everybody says.
Well, they're already setting up for the big steal.
Why would Joe Manchin, who's fundamentally from a red state, I mean, West Virginia, I mean, their whole economic system, their basis for their existence as a state practically economically will be destroyed by these provisions in this bill.
Absolutely will. Okay. It's coal and fracking. I mean, they don't have much else in West Virginia.
That's right. Including the good common sense to have gotten rid of Joe Manchin years ago. They continue to vote for these people.
I know.
I don't understand, and increasingly, don't have much patience for it.
Yeah. And it's $700 billion they're fixing to spend on
this.
And it's like, I'm sorry, we're broke.
Yeah.
The nation is broke.
That's money they're creating out of thin air. That's this so-called printing of money, where these are just entries that they create. This will further reduce the purchasing power of your dollars, which are under severe stress right now at 9+% inflation.
So to call it the Inflation Protection Act is the equivalent of calling a pro-abortion act the Child Protection Act.
Right, or gun control, gun safety.
Yeah, gun safety. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. All right. They're going to spend $369 billion in leftist climate change programs, with the goal of lowering carbon emissions by 40% by 2030. Really?
A,
Lower
it's
it by
impossible.
40
B, you don't need to do that.
You don't need to do it. No, that's exactly right. $300 billion in deficit reduction. Now, how do you reduce the deficit if you're spending more?
Right. Well, they're going to take more money from people. They're going to tax them.
Yeah.
That's how.
$64 billion to extend Obamacare subsidies. They want to increase IRS funding so that they can find more ways to take money from the taxpayer. And as you said, they want to implement the OECD, the 15% global minimum income tax or corporate tax. Now, that's just one that they're pushing. They didn't include the transaction tax that Janet Yellen and the World Economic Forum and all these other yahoos are pushing.
And note, that's actually a treaty.
Yeah.
So that really requires Senate approval, okay, as a treaty. Okay, so the whole thing is unconstitutional on its face.
It absolutely is. It absolutely is. You know, it floors me when they push things like this, because number one, it's another big lie.
Right.
This is the biggest lie they've told.
Biggest hoax,
today.
I would say, ever.
And these people get up there and with a straight face talk to the American people and say, "Oh yes, we're going to reduce inflation by printing more money." Here we go, redefining the terminology.
Well, it's not a fait accompli. There are a couple of variables here. One, because they're doing it through reconciliation, which is a process by which the Senate uses a budget process. This is so dishonest, too. I mean, this is an incredibly disingenuous, dishonest thing. They use what is essentially a budget process, thereby avoiding the filibuster. They don't have to deal with the 60-vote threshold to get legislation passed when they do it through reconciliation. But reconciliation is really supposed to be pretty narrowly focused on budget issues. Okay, this is the money we've allocated for spending on these things, these specific things. So there is a remote chance that the Senate parliamentarian will pass judgment on this and say, you can't include this in the bill. You can have this as a bill. They're not saying the Senate parliamentarian doesn't get to dictate what the Senate can float. He can say, yeah, this doesn't meet the reconciliation test. You cannot stick this bill under the rubric of reconciliation and do it. So there's a chance that some of the provisions will be stricken there.
Well, let's hope so.
And I guess Kyrsten Sinema is still a variable, right? I mean, they need both of those senators.
She hasn't committed.
She has claimed that she will hold firm in the past to no new taxes in this economy. I don't think she's up. I don't think she can stand up to the.
Well, with Manchin caving in, I'm not sure she'll hold out.
Right, and this is a holy grail for the left, is to get us down the road to this global, environmental communist nonsense. And all we can hope is that if they do get it going, that it will be so untenable and so destructive that they'll have to undo it. They just have to I mean, people. I don't believe people are going to just freeze in the dark in this country.
Well, I'm going to tell you what. They're going to be some mad people when they start these rolling blackouts.
Right.
When they go to the grocery store and there's not enough food in there.
Or you start getting these power bills that are
power bills. When they have to get in line at the gas station.
Look, I like I've told you a couple times on the show, I spent some time up in Massachusetts during the wintertime, and usually a local news story of the day at the end of their seasons. Well, these people, some of them, we had these periods of time where it was so cold, $1,000 and $1,500 a month power bills. Well, wait till that's $4,000 for folks like that who can't afford it at all. They can't afford the $1,000. They certainly aren't going to be in a position to pony up $3,000 and $4,000, so they won't be able to run their heat.
That's right.
Or worse, the energy simply won't be there.
Right.
I mean, that's the thing that people don't get. Well, these prices will go up, but we'll manage. Well, you're not going to manage if it isn't there.
Well, that's the thing. If you haven't received a $6,000 increase in your annual pay, you're falling behind. You're not even keeping up. How people can look to these people and say, oh yeah, they're doing a great job. Well, that's like Biden talking about the economy. Oh, the economy's booming. I created 9 million new jobs. Well, you didn't create 9 million new jobs. That's 9 million jobs that were shut down by the COVID idiocy.
I mean, when there's nowhere to go but up, that's an easy claim to make. Yeah. Well, I mean, it's just, I'm feeling particularly frustrated, as maybe evidenced, by my delivery tonight. But it's very, very difficult to tolerate just the mendacity of these people. It's just unbelievable, and yet somehow, and I think I was discussing it with somebody else that we both know the other day. And, we were in agreement that I think a lot of the problem boils down fundamentally to people are still relatively comfortable You
Yes,
know,
they are.
until you get to a point where you don't have anything to lose, or you've been pushed beyond the point where you feel like it matters, okay, what you do. But as long as there's still some food and you've got your shelter and your little 401k and the other things, you know, people don't really want to take much action. Right.
Yeah.
So this is where I think the globalists and the leftists, I think that's where they believe they've got us. I think they think, okay, we've got enough technology and enough capability. Like in China is largely what they're doing. You know, we can keep people fed. You know, we'll be in control, and they'll do what we tell them. They're not going to really want it. Their basic needs are met. You know, so we're not going to get much pushback. And I think that's part of their strategy.
I agree. That is their strategy. You know, as Klaus Schwab said, in the future you'll own nothing and you'll be happy.
You'll be happy.
You'll be happy. But you know what? We're not happy.
That's
I'm
right.
not happy.
I'm not.
And you don't need to be happy either. You need to push back on this stuff. And there are groups out there that are fighting this. And there are groups out there who have long stood by what the information they put out in the 50s and 60s that has come to pass.
Right, warning about these very, very eventualities.
Warning about the communists coming into the colleges, warning about the insiders, the establishment.
Well, and it's really important. You need to examine, you know, do a little introspection and figure out, you know, how do you measure your liberty? And how important is that to you? And figure out what you think you'd really be willing to put up with, even if all of your needs are met. And start thinking in terms of, boy, what kind of country do you want to leave those that you leave behind when you finally shuffle loose this mortal coil? I mean, what's it going to be like? Because I don't think it's going to be a very utopian place.
No, and that's the thing, you know, and bottom line, nobody wants utopia in reality.
Correct.
If you had utopia and everything was honky-dory, people would break the system just to change the routine.
That's correct.
And with that, we're out of time. All is not lost. We'll be back next weekend, and I hope you have a great week. I'm Robert Crescione.
I'm John Gatsis.
Good night.
Difference. The difference is we buy with you in mind. For generations, we have listened to our customers. We can help you find the look you want for every room in your house. Quality, style, color, and of course, service. Follow us on Facebook and Instagram. Davis Furniture, the family business where we treat you like family. Let us help you make your house a home. Davis Furniture, historical downtown Rocky Mount, on the corner of Hill and Main.